Welcome to the Pen Leader Podcast, where strategic leaders get straight to the topics, strengthening our awareness and sharpening our minds. The Pen Leader Podcast is produced by Roar, a production division of Mays & Associates Ltd. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Now here is your award-winning host, Dr. Shanda Gore.
And welcome to the Pen Leader Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about mental health in the workplace. And I am so glad to have with me Dr. Andrea Mata, who is the founder of Bright Spot Families Ltd. She's also an author of the #2 parenting book, Practical Tips for the Pooped Out Parent. And she's been featured on CNN, Tamron Hall Show, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, formerly Huffington Post, but now called the Huff Post. She graduated summa cum laude with her Bachelor of Science degree from Valparaiso University. While there, she majored in psychology and minored in criminology and urban studies. She completed her doctorate in clinical child psychology at Kent State University, and she had the fortunate experience of interning at Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska, where the mission is to save children and heal families. She was a college professor at the University of Findlay until she realized she needed to live out her life's mission of fortifying families. As a result, she resigned and founded Bright Spot Families. She's been married for a number of years, and she's been blessed with having twins and a young daughter, which I know has a whole lot of stories behind that. But without further ado, welcome, Dr. Mata.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. So this is probably real easy for you because you've been featured on so many shows and done so much with your book, and we're going to get into that too. But I'm going to go right into this whole workplace situation because I think people don't make the connection. But from your clinical psychology perspective, what patterns are you seeing in the workplace when it comes to families, and how is it that you are involved with helping them?
I think the big thing that we're seeing that I go into is like how gentle parenting for the last 20 or so years has created like the Gen Z mental health crisis. And then now that Gen Zs have entered the workforce, there is a hot mess because like 60% of businesses have fired a Gen Z employee within months of hiring them because they don't know how to dress, they don't know how to act, they don't know how to communicate well. They have poor initiation, poor motivation, and then they expect to be promoted very, very quickly. But my big thing is that it's always coming from like the gentle parenting movement that we have, got ourselves into for the 20 years.
And just for clarity, we're not saying everyone within these groups or generational boxes that we're talking about. But what you're seeing is that those are coming in the door have some of the characteristics and some of the challenges you're hearing back from the organizations you're working with. So that kind of reminds me of that whole discussion, like everybody gets an award, everybody gets a trophy, everyone gets that. And there was really, at one point, that started really to try to help build up confidence. But you're saying fortunately, it's hurt in some ways, especially if we're getting ready for the workplace.
Yeah, so I think like the participation trophies and like that big push was even a little bit before gentle parenting. And now we're into, hey, we're going to focus in on feelings above behaviors or thoughts. And we're going to treat everyone as if they are our equals and everyone has the equal amount of say and power. And then we're also going to get rid of rewards and punishments because we want people to be internally motivated.
Does that always work? It sounds like it doesn't work.
It doesn't work because what happens, at least for like the focusing in on the feelings. Well, now you have a whole generation who only does things when they feel like doing things. And like, how often do you feel like going to work and like doing the things, right? And so like there's that issue. There's also the fact that 38% of Gen Z employees will take a mental health day the day after they get feedback from their manager. And so I've worked with multiple managers where they're like, what are we supposed to do with this? Like they called off the next day when I just gave them feedback. And so I think that's an issue. And then getting rid of rewards and punishments. Well, like the vast majority of people are not internally motivated to go to work. They go to work because they need money. And so that's why people go to work. But then if you're waiting for people to be internally motivated, well, chances are they're probably going to leave because they're going to go out and find their passion.
Mm.
And they're going to leave and become an entrepreneur. And then the last one is like they literally come in and they think that they should be promoted and they should have a salary that's equivalent to their supervisors who have been there for 20 years.
I've heard a number of presidents, CEOs talk about, again, I want a great workforce, but there's an expectation I can't meet when that new hire comes in. And the new hire may not say it right away, but they get to what we were talking about. They're like 3 months, 6-month review. They're just like they're not even hardly at a probationary period, and that's occurring. So
Yeah, and they're being fired. Like I remember I had a client that was highly recruited out of college, and then he went to like a big firm in one of the big cities. And then within weeks of his onboarding, he had to take like a mental health, like a 3-month mental health break where he can like moved back. And he was working with me, and like I think we were meeting like twice a week, which if you don't know about clinical therapy, that's a high amount of time. Like usually I see clients maybe once a week, maybe every other week. But for him, it was like twice a week to try to get him back to like functioning level.
So here's a question is, all right, I'm a present CEO or I'm running a business. This may be a small business and I want to hire. What should I set myself up for to, if I see this coming, because I want to hire out of this generation? Any recommendations there?
So the biggest recommendation is for your managers and your leaders to adopt a high expectations, high support, like leadership style. And so with the high expectations, like you're telling them exactly what you're expecting of them. You're not like lowering the bar. You're telling them exactly what they need and you're giving them consistent feedback. But you're also pairing that with like support of, hey, like relationships are super important to them, the relationship piece, and you're like investing into like both their personal and their professional lives and those kind of things. So I think if you can find that good balance between high expectations and high support for your leaders to kind of go and work with the Gen Z population, then I think businesses will fare much better compared to if they maintain like it's my way or the highway, or we're going to just like cater to their every whim, which I also have seen businesses do.
Yeah. Now, the problem is with that scenario, you're not getting what you need as a business done. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. Like why would you cater to them? Because then I remember I know someone who was like the director, like a creative director, and HR came in and was like, "Hey, we need to fire your best designer." And
Mm.
she was like, "Why?" And they're like, "Well, we can't tell you anything above and beyond like some Gen Z employees did not like some things that the person said, and so we need to fire that designer." And when the person came to me and was like telling me, I was like, just have them come work with me. Give me 2 sessions. Like have the company pay for 2 coaching sessions. I will work with that. And then you don't lose your creative designer. But they ended up firing the person anyways. I
Oh,
know.
and I've also seen and talked with individuals who have this whole they come in and everything's going fine and expectations are being met, but then there's a change in leadership and a different philosophy comes in.
Mhm.
And now what looks right is now wrong and what was wrong is now right. So how would you advise just getting over that, especially from a psychology side of it, is how that to maneuver in a system like that so that you can recalibrate.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to like what are the businesses' values?
Mm,
And like I would hope that they wouldn't, if they have these values to be, hey, we are our leaders are high support, high expectations. I'm hoping they're not hiring a leader that doesn't have that same because it's not in line with your values. And so why would you be making hires that are not in line with your values and is just going to cause uproar in your company?
mhm. Well, if someone were to look for you because you're growing fast
Hmm.
and the fact that you've got the book out so that people can pick up that book
Yeah.
and find and read it, but also you got a new location. I know you
Yep.
Bowling Green.
So Bright Spot Families, it's a psychological practice, like clinical practice down in Bowling Green, Ohio. It's right on Main Street. So it's me doing therapy mostly in person. I usually work with like individuals 30 years and younger, but I also work with like couples and families, and I do parent coaching. And then also I have Dr. Alex Long with me, and he is, because he lives in Columbus, so he's mostly telehealth, but he sees individuals over the age of 18 for clinical stuff. But then both of us do sports psychology coaching. I'll go younger than he will. He'll go like 8th grade and above, but then I'll go a little bit younger for like probably 5th grade, 6th grade. But anything younger than that, like they don't need it.
Well, I was going to say, because you have a sports background, so you understand that sports world and how it to even, especially if you have a young person, they could be in high school, and there's so much pressure right now with NIL and where are you going to go and what are you going to do and are you going to take this to the next level and how do I get there and travel sports. What do you suggest from and it's for those that are parents out there too listening is they've got a young person and they're disappointed in not being promoted on the team or whatever their goal is, they're not making the mark. And they have to talk to their parents quite a bit. What would you suggest?
So disappointment is a hard emotion, and lots of people struggle with it. And so with disappointment, I usually say, okay, lead with empathy, parents, and like go in and, focus on those feelings for a little bit, like empathize with them. Like, that sucks. That's terrible. I get it. Let them have their feels. And then you need to transition to like, what are we going to do about it? What is the problem solving? And so it's like, okay, so this happened. What are we going to do about it? So I remember recently someone was like, I struggled in a baseball game or like a dodgeball game or something like that in gym class. And I was like, okay. I'm like, so feel your feelings. Okay, what feelings did you have? And I validated those feelings. And then I was like, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? Like, what are the options? And so we sat down and we did problem solving, because I think it's one of those underrated skills that we don't talk about and we don't teach enough. And so then we did problem solving. And it's like, okay, well, you can work on your throwing. You could work on your quickness, your running. You could just get over it. And so we came up with like different solutions. I was like, okay, which one would you like to do? And they're like, well, I don't really care about dodgeball. And I was like, okay, so you're not willing to put in the work to improve at being like a better dodgeball player. And they're like, not really. And I was like, okay, well then you don't care about it. So then let's move on. And they're like, okay. And so then we started talking about another topic.
It seems pretty simple, but it takes a lot for someone to get there, I think, especially if it's their life. They've been playing the sport since they've been 3.
Yeah.
And there's expectations and pressures. Like, if you do this, then you'll get a scholarship and then you can go to school. So what do you recommend because there's a lot of pushback. And I work with a lot of officials, and you hear about sports and the challenges of parents coming in, interfering with the game, trying to get the game to go a different direction on behalf of their child. How do you counsel through that?
So a lot of the time when I talk to parents, and I remember I had a client a few years back, and the mom and the dad were like the ones that was caught, like kind of putting a bunch of pressure on the kid. And so I had a sit down conversation with them, and I was like, hey, you all are the problem. Maybe not in these words, but I was like, hey, you all are the problem. You're the ones that are making him more anxious. I'm like, so why don't you play the role as parent? And how I see the role as parent within sports is to be the supportive one. He has coaches. You pay for those coaches. So let them do that role. And you sit in the stands and you are just being the cheerleader and you are supporting and you are clapping and you are not doing anything else. We are not yelling at refs. We're not cussing people out. We're not yelling at, the athletes. We're not talking to the athletes during the game, those kind of things. And when I coach high school football and I'm on the sidelines with them, I will hear the parents, and like I'm on the freaking sidelines and they're in the stands and I could hear them. And there's been times where like I will just turn around and I will stare at parents And eventually they'll be like, it's going to be quiet now. But yeah, it's like, so just be supportive, and you don't need to like talk about the game on the ride home. Just be supportive.
Well, I think what you're also saying here too is it will help them when they go off into the workplace. And again, being able to handle disappointment
Mhm.
because you're not going to get that raise or you're not going to get that promotion when you think, and you might even get someone else might get it
Yeah.
when you think that you should have got it. And how do you deal with that? So I think that that's really a really good suggestion on like how you approach it, gets them ready for the real world. How can organizations partner better with mental health professionals like yourself?
And so I think it's reaching out to them and seeing whether or not they offer workshops or keynote talks, and like having those mental health providers coming in and giving them like, okay, here's the tools that we need. Okay, we want to talk about anxiety. Let's talk about anxiety. Okay, hey, let's go into parenting skills. And lots of companies are like, why would I bring in a parenting expert? And I want to look at them and be, again, I have to figure out how to educate people better, because it's like in my mind, parenting skills and leadership skills are the same skills, because I say, you want to parent using high expectations within the context of the warm and fuzzies. And then the terminology that I use with leaders is high support, high expectations. It's literally the same skills. It's just different audiences. And if you do bring in like a parenting expert, you're teaching your people leadership skills. Then you're teaching them parenting skills, which are going to help them in both their personal life and their professional life. You're going to help them reduce spillover from personal life to work life, which helps the company because then they are more productive. They get more productive, and then they tend to retain, and they like their job better because now they feel like an actual person,
Mhm.
because their employers are investing in both their personal and their professional life.
That's excellent. Yes. So, what conversations are leaders afraid to even have, but really need to in your observation right now in the workplace?
I think one of the things is, I think, kind of revolving around what I call adaptability. So lots of people are talking about resiliency and all of the things. And I talk about, I want to make youth and individuals more adaptable. And what I mean by that is that they possess the skills that they can go into whatever environment they are in, and they can assess the situation, they can figure out what the expectations are, and then they can utilize their skills to thrive in whatever situation they are in. So that adaptability piece. And I think not many companies are like leaning into resiliency or adaptability pieces. And they're just getting frustrated because they're like, well, why isn't this Gen Z employee doing what I need them to do? And it's like, well, because they've been raised in environments that haven't taught them to be adaptable. And so now the onus and the responsibility is on workplaces to have those conversations and to kind of build in those supports. That also makes them uncomfortable to have to do that because they don't think it's their responsibility.
Mhm, mhm. They think that they should be ready-made when they come.
Exactly. And they're
Yes.
not.
No, no. I talk about it in my book, The Pen Leader Path, is that the sharpness, having the experience and the education. I talk about being straightforward and being able to, keep on a pathway, but that pivot,
Yeah.
being able to pivot successfully, that's a make or break for any leader.
Yeah.
And that makes it from the mediocre leaders, good, even great. I don't even want a great leader. I want an excellent leader.
Mhm.
And I think that pivot is the key.
Yeah.
Can
Because and realize that like, oh, there's something that I'm doing as a leader that's not working. Let me seek out services or, coaching or something along those lines. I know I have a friend who reached out to me a few weeks ago, and she was like, hey, she's like, so I know you do all the Gen Z stuff in the workplace. And I was like, yes. And she was like, can you help me? And I was like, sure. And it turned out that she wanted to hire this employee who used to be an intern at the company. But when she asked the intern's former employer or like boss supervisor, they were like, yeah, we wouldn't hire this person.
Mm.
We wouldn't hire them because they did the mental health day after they got disappointing news.
Mm-hmm.
And so my manager was like, I just want to get ahead of that. And so we had like one coaching session and I was like, do this, do this, do this. And then I checked back in with her and she's like, she's doing so amazing. She's like, you're right. Like I have to do a lot of hand holding, but I'd much rather do hand holding in this first 12 weeks and then have the employee that I need compared to losing this person in 12 weeks and then having to find someone else.
Yeah, that's a key there too. It's the cost of replacement. You spend a lot of time, resources, personnel to find the person.
Mhm.
You want to do the best you can to hold on to the person. People who are putting individuals on personal, well, depending on how people use it, sometimes they use PIPs,
Yeah.
performance improvement plans differently. But I just caution anybody listening that if you're using them and it's only to really hit over the head a point, there's more likely you're going to lose that employee than really trying to help them improve. And that means getting them professional development.
Well, that's the thing, like, because my husband works for a company, and he's had employees underneath him, and I don't think being with him and whenever he tells me, like, one of his employees goes on a PIP, I'm pretty sure that employee they never improve, but it's also because the company is not giving them the support or professional development that they need in order to get better.
Yes. So for those thinking about it right now, especially my HR friends,
Mhm.
I'm like, yes, you want to get them off the PIP, but there's a way to do it.
There's
So,
a way to do that. Get them skills.
yes.
Because everyone can always develop more skills. Just help them identify okay, what are the skills that they need, and then who are the coaches in your network that are able to help with these individuals.
Excellent. Well, I can't thank you enough for your time coming on and giving these pointers. I truly appreciate your time
Mhm.
and coming on, Dr. Mata.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. And thank you to our listeners who are sharing the show and liking it. We so appreciate you. And we appreciate our sponsors, Miss Shannon Roof, Principal Real Estate Advisor and Agent Development Coach, and Mr. Brian Davis. For all your home, auto, and life insurance needs, contact Brian Davis. Like a good neighbor, Brian is there. And of course, until next time.
The Pen Leader podcast is hosted by Dr. Shanda Gore and brought to you by Mays & Associates Ltd., creating customized solutions for growth in the areas of leadership development, strategic planning, and culture building. Find out more at www.maysassociatesltd.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pen Leader podcast and share with others.